To Bishop Najarian, Reverend Fathers, all of my parliamentary colleagues who've already been mentioned, and can I also acknowledge Reverend Fred Nile from the Upper House and Dr. Clark from the Upper House, David Clark from the Upper House, who are also here and great supporters. And ladies and gentlemen, it goes without saying that on this day, every year, we remember the atrocities that are part of our families and part of our community. And as Dr. Aboudian so eloquently articulated just moments ago, the wounds are deep and have not healed because the perpetrators of this heinous crime continue to distort and deny the truth. Tonight we remember the 20th century's first genocide, a deliberate, premeditated pogrom that left 1.5 million dead, hundreds of thousands more displaced, simply because they were Armenian. The details are horribly familiar to all of us here. But our presence in Australia today in 2018 is testament that for all the devastation the genocide inflicted, the attempt to eliminate a people and their culture did not succeed. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to especially acknowledge our collective gratitude to those who gave the Armenian diaspora shelter, support, and opportunity in every corner of the world, and ultimately the opportunity to rebuild a modern, independent Armenian nation in the land of our forebears. I know that all of us in the diaspora are proud of the young Armenians who in the past few weeks have used their freedoms to protect the integrity of Armenia's democracy. Only by safeguarding democracy can we ensure that Armenians' modern survival continues. And it is incredibly inspiring to see the next generation find their voice to exercise the freedoms that have been so hard fought. But as Australians today, I'm so proud to say that we express our profound thanks to this nation, our nation, where so many Armenian families have been given the chance to live and prosper in freedom and peace. On this day, we remember that Armenians and Australians share a special bond. In a few hours' time, we'll rise before dawn to mark Anzac Day, when we honour the men and women who served and sacrificed for Australia on the shores of Gallipoli on April 25, 1915. Coincidentally, the morning after the Ottoman Empire set about to wipe the Armenian people from the face of the earth. The freedoms and liberties for which the Anzacs fought are the freedoms and liberties we enjoy today, and for that we are deeply and eternally grateful. We also take the opportunity tonight to give thanks for the incredible acts of compassion and generosity that forged the unbreakable link between Australia and Armenia a century ago. As the First World War came to an end, the Anzacs were some of the first to see and respond to the horrors that were being perpetrated against the Armenian people. For instance, Captain Thomas White of the Australian Flying Corps saw the graves of Armenian men in Tel Amin, in what is today Iraq, an experience he documented in his book, Guests of the Unspeakable. In Eskişehir in Western Turkey, Lieutenant Leslie Lusham witnessed Armenian women and children being driven into sheep trucks. Able seaman John Wheat saw the town of Afyon stripped of its Armenian population. As the scale of the genocide became clear, the Anzacs helped rescue Armenian deportees. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Mills physically carried an infant girl to Jerusalem, one of a group of 900 survivors of the deportation of 10,000 Armenians from Cilicia. Colonel Stanley Savage led the rescue of tens of thousands of Armenians and Assyrians in northern Persia, an act for which he was honoured with the Distinguished Service Medal. At home in Australia from 1915 onwards, organisations like the Armenian Relief Committee, led by Sydney's Lord Mayor at the time, Mr Smith, raised tens of thousands of pounds for Armenians in need. Australians opened an orphanage for Armenian children in Beirut. Ships setting out from Australian ports carried relief supplies for Armenian deportees through to 1929. This remarkable humanitarian campaign was there for Armenians at their time of greatest need. It showed that Australians are a people with deep empathy for the suffering of others, a concept which is deeply rooted in our national fabric. We must always remain vigilant against denial. We must do all in our power to prevent such dark and dangerous hatred from manifesting itself over and over again. And unfortunately, we know that history keeps repeating itself. The failure to recognise and indeed punish these gravest crimes against humanity not only embolden those who exploit these atrocities, but also those who deny them for their own purposes. And of course, we remember all too well bolstered by the world's failure to punish the Ottoman Empire for genocide, Adolf Hitler, as he planned the Holocaust, asked the infamous question, who, after all, speaks today of the extermination of the Armenians? We've come a long way in acceptance of the indisputable facts surrounding the Armenian genocide, but the forces of denial remain strong. I myself was approached by a representative of a Turkish organisation while on a recent trade mission to Washington, DC. I thought it was odd that I was approached in this way during a conference of state premiers from Australia and governors of the United States, when the topic of the convention was issues affecting states such as infrastructure and economic policy. The Turkish representatives asked to take a photo with me that I can only presume was for the purpose of suggesting I condone their activity. I declined the offer, as I didn't understand their motive. But as you see, ladies and gentlemen, the forces of denial are real and their highly organised efforts ongoing. But as Premier of New South Wales, I'm incredibly proud to lead a state whose parliament first recognised the Armenian Genocide in 1997 and which commemorates it each year with the widest bipartisan support. And I hope one day we'll be celebrating that effort at the federal parliamentary level as well. In New South Wales, in the heart of the Armenian community of Australia, we come together on the 24th of April to commemorate this historical truth. We state clearly and unambiguously that what took place from April 24, 1915 was genocide. We mourn the lives lost and pay tribute to those who survived, nurtured their culture and faith, and created a proud diaspora that extends across the world and back to the land of our forebears. Tonight, once again, we give thanks to the Anzacs and to our fellow Australians who've been such steadfast friends of the Armenian people across generations. Today, once again, we resolve that we will never let our collective memories fade or our responses grow numb. We will always remain steadfast and vigilant to ensure that such horrors never befall a persecuted people ever again. Thank you.